Today's episode is brought to you by Tarbell 3.
And that's how we're going to kick this thing off. Welcome, everybody, to the International Brotherhood of Magicians official podcast. This is, guess what, guys? We actually have one that went live and people listened to it. My name's Jason Michaels. I'm your host. Welcome to the show. My co-hosts, Scott Cantrell and Ben Young.
Hi,
Howdy.
Jason. That's where we're supposed to say hi?
That's the spot. When I'm just going to talk a lot, and then at some point I'll pause, and that's your cue to you just add something.
Just give us like a finger point.
Okay, all right. That's for the YouTube subscribers, the folks who are watching on the I.B.M channel. Hey, this just so you know, this isn't even an actual real podcast. We're doing these podcasts twice a month. This is a supplemental podcast that is just a special one because we have the International Brotherhood of Magicians has some cool news about the upcoming convention. Our convention is held in July. Right now it is February, and the early bird registration will be done soon, in just a couple of days. And so we thought we'd do just a quick podcast. This is going to be a little bit shorter than normal, but talking about the convention, talking about some of our favorite things that have happened at conventions, just some personal stories. Because sometimes, here's the thing about being a magician. I know tons of magicians that have never been to a convention before in their life. I know folks who have been doing magic for years. And I was like, hey, I was talking to a friend of mine. I was like, what magic convention have you ever been to? And he's like, I've never been to one. I was like, what? So, I know that not everybody, so you're going to have some folks who are just interested in magic and they're just finding this podcast and going that there is such a thing as a convention. And then you got other folks who go to a lot of conventions. But do you guys have a favorite convention? I know we're going to talk about the I.B.M convention, but do you have like one that you are? Just lost Ben. All right, and that happens. That's how this podcast goes. Ben just disappears. So I won't ask this question to Ben. I'll just ask it to Scott. Scott, do you have a convention over the years that stands out to you?
I was really hoping Ben would go first. Uh, a bunch. So I'll tell a quick, I don't know, it's a favorite convention. It's a convention, unfortunately, I haven't been able to get back to in a number of years just because of scheduling. But I'll tell a quick story.
Oh, good. And
Ben is back now.
Ben
he can
made it back to the
story.
podcast. We're going to do zero editing on this, so they're going to hear it all.
Great.
One quick convention story, and then I don't know if I have a favorite. I go to a bunch of conventions. I've been to Magi Fest, Winter Carnival of Magic, the Unconventional Convention, Magic Live, the I.B.M, SAM, and a number of others.
The real question is, which conventions have you not been to, apparently?
Well, a bunch of those too, frankly. But every convention has its own personality because of the nature of the people who are there and the people who run it and how it's run. And so I think there's pros and cons to every convention. Let me say it this way, not pros and cons. There are things I like that are different at the different conventions. One quick story. I was a young buck in magic. I had just joined Ring 58 in Knoxville and had heard about the Unconventional Convention in Corbin, Kentucky. Which is a really fun regional convention. I mean, anybody can go, but very laid back and very casual. Corbin, Kentucky, as an interesting point of trivia, is where the first KFC is. It still is. You can go visit it. So there you go.
Are we doing trivia now? Is that what this is?
I thought is that not our
Ben, get your trivia ready.
I'm ready.
And so I'm walking down the hallway of the lodge where this convention is held, and I hear this voice. I'm with my dad. He took me to the convention, and I know the 58 guys: Mike Messing, Tom Borjahan, Michael Stratman, Bob Knigge, who was alive at the time, and these were my friends and mentors in magic early on. I'm walking down the hallway going to, I guess, to lunch or dinner or something, and I hear this voice, this incredibly crystal clear announcing voice in the hallway. And I look over and I see who it is. And as it happens, my dad used to watch the Weather Channel a lot. We were kids, so you're going to watch the Weather Channel, see what's going on. So we were familiar with some of the anchors who were on the Weather Channel. Well, walking down this lodge in Corbin, Kentucky at a random magic convention I'd never been to, and I look over and it's Paul Emick
I love
who at the
Paul.
time was, God rest his soul, Paul at the time was one of the lead anchors on the Weather Channel. And so in the middle of nowhere, Kentucky, at a magic convention, Dad and I look over and there's Paul Emick, I think talking to Mike Woodward at the time, who's another well-known Lexington magician, and obviously good friends. And I'm not starstruck because of the famous magicians who are around, right, hanging out, who I should know who they are, but starstruck because of the Weather Channel guy. And so it was really kind of a surreal moment, and it opened my eyes to this idea that there are so many people in magic that we don't, they may be celebrities or people we know about, or maybe not, right? Maybe they're just really good doctors or lawyers or engineers or manufacturing people working on an assembly line. And magic is an incredible community because it brings all those people together in the same place, and we're all at the same level, right?
Yeah,
in terms of loving magic.
Absolutely.
And so I met Paul Emick, and I was with Vorjahan. He was like, "Do you want to meet him?" I was like, "Of course." And little did I know that all these guys were good friends, and I'm fortunate enough to get adopted into that family, so to speak. So there's
that's
there's
awesome.
one quick story.
It does strike me because you talking about meeting Paul, a celebrity, it reminds me of the magic celebrities that I've met over the years, or maybe I haven't met them all, but I've been to conventions where I turned to my right, and standing right next to me is David Copperfield, and I'm like, what is going on right now? I remember being at a convention and having somebody tap me on the shoulder and just point and said, "Here, look, two rows in front of you," and it was David Blaine sitting there. I've seen Chris Angel. I've seen all the magic. I mean, I say magic celebrity. These are legitimate celebrities as well. The point is, what's cool about the magic community and the magic convention specifically is you really can meet your heroes. It's a small community, a group of people who you look up to, who has shaped magic. Maybe they're the person that you give, you say, "Oh, that's the person that got me into magic," and then all of a sudden you're standing there right next to them, and you can start up a conversation. And so it's not like professional athletes where you don't get to go meet, the Super Bowl MVP just because you want to, but you go to a magic convention, you absolutely can meet these people, and it's really amazing how that works.
Just as a note, the Super Bowl MVP will be at the IBM National Convention.
Nope.
I thought that's what you said. I'm sorry.
That's not what I said. Nope. Wrong. Well, you know what? Hey, there's no reason. Hey, maybe he wants to be. All right. That'd be cool.
Call Philadelphia and find out.
Yeah. Magic conventions, they humanize everyone that's in magic, right? We see people on video, we see people online, or we hear about these legends, and then it's like, oh, right, at the end of the day, we're all magic nerds, and we're all in the same place.
For yourself.
Some of us are cooler than others. I'm looking at you, Scott. And but yeah, it's great. I mean, I think we all have those stories, right? Of like, you look over and then there's just someone that you've idolized for forever, or that you didn't even know was a magician or whatever. One story that I've got, it was my first Magic Live, and Michael Carbonaro was there. And it was opening night. Dealer's room opens up, which if you've been to Magic Live, massive dealer's room. And I was there were like a few of us that were just sort of hanging around Michael. And then he was like, "Hey, do you want to like walk the dealer's room?" I'm like, yes. So I'm like walking around the dealer's room with him, and he's looking at, he's geeking out over things that people are demoing, because he's looking at it through the filter of, oh, we could use this on the TV show. And that was just really cool to see him be like so excited, so giddy about, a portable like levitation or whatever. And he's looking at it and thinking about it in these different ways. And that was just like, that was so wild, being at this giant convention and seeing a magic celebrity there and getting to walk around the dealer room just like everybody else, was very, very cool.
You remind me. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, speaking of dealer room, you reminded me of the very first magic convention I attended was so long ago when I first got into magic. I don't even remember what it was, but it was in like 1991 or 1992 in Nashville. And I made my way into the dealer's room. You're talking about the dealer's room. And here's the thing: if you are a magician or you're a magic enthusiast and you don't know what we're talking about, the dealer's room is like this big giant magic shop where you have all these magicians who sell magic tricks that all come together, and they're all in this big giant room. And you just get to what's the coolest thing ever? You just get to walk around and look at all this cool stuff. I mean, it's like going to the ultimate toy store for magicians, and you see things that have brand new ideas, and it's so cool. But I was in the dealer room at this convention, and two things happened. Number one, I saw there was a guy there, and he borrowed a dollar bill, and he crumpled it up and he placed it on his hand, and all of a sudden he started wiggling his finger at it, and the bill started to kind of like animate, and then all of a sudden it lifted up and it was floating. And he does this thing with his hands where he like runs his hands over the top, over the sides, and everything
Jason,
like that.
that is impossible.
It was this dollar bill that he borrowed was levitating. It was this, and I'm looking from above, I'm looking from the side, I'm looking underneath. This is the greatest magic trick I had ever seen. It blew my mind. I was a young magician. It blew my mind, and that is when I bought my first IT reel. I'm not going to say exactly what it is, but that is when I got my first IT reel. And guess what? Here's the coolest part about that. I got to go home, and within an hour's worth of practice, I could do that trick.
Yeah.
I could do that trick for my family. I took it to church. I did the trick for people in the fellowship hall when we were eating dinner. It was the greatest. It was so cool. And it was so within reach. It's one of the cool things about magic conventions that there's just so many there. That's the interesting. So the interesting thing about magic conventions, there's so many different things. There's lots of different programming. So you have magicians who lecture. You have, and they're going to teach you. They're going to teach you the magic that they've created. You've got shows, multiple shows, where all these magicians who come from all over the world are going to perform their pieces of their magic tricks, the things that they've created that they have expertise in, and these are incredibly entertaining shows. And so the I.B.M. convention is a multi-day convention in July. It's taking place in Houston, Texas. And here's the reason we're doing this, because right now, through the end of the month, through February 28th, there is early bird registration, which means you can save the most money that you can. Like after the 28th, the prices go up. But you can save the absolute most money that you possibly can if you register today. And you can find out more information about it on ibmconvention.com. Now let me tell you, here's the thing. We talked about in our last podcast, we talked about some of the different talent. We mentioned Dan Sperry and Mervant Vera, John Allen. There's been some new updates. And now I don't think we mentioned this one in the last one. Did Rob Zabrecki's going to be there? Zabrecki,
right?
Did we announce him last time?
I think we did.
Did we?
So, but
well, okay. Well, he's
certainly
so
worth
good.
announcing again.
He's so good. I'm going to.
He's still coming.
He's still coming.
Jared Kopf is going to be there. Ben, do you know Jared Kopf?
Not personally, but he's a heavy hitter.
Yeah, he's a heavy hitter. So there, I just received two more. Names within the last couple of days, and I'm about to butcher this poor guy's name because he's Italian. So it's either Giacomo Bigliardi or Giacomo Bigliardi, and he's going to be there. And then there's another Italian coming, Gaia Rossi, and she is apparently an Italian magic champion as well. And they're both. Now, here's the thing. You may not know these names, but that's what's one of the cool things about going to a convention is because the talent coordinator, Ben Barnes, he goes out and finds the talent that maybe you haven't heard of before. So we might say a name and you go, oh, I've seen this person before, but there's a guarantee that there's a couple of names you don't know and they are worth your attention. They are worth paying attention to because they're fantastic. If they're at the I.B.M. convention, if they're appearing at a major convention, they have something very worthwhile to share with you. I have one more story, but does anybody else? You guys, we only have a couple more minutes. Yeah, give it to us, Ben.
This ties into what I was going to say a few minutes ago. Is that the great thing about magic conventions is that you get to see magic that you normally wouldn't see. I feel like most of us on a day-to-day basis, we're learning magic and watching magic that is similar to what we tend to do ourselves. And this is such a nice time to sit and just take it all in and get to actually just watch magic that, maybe you see manipulation, stage manipulation that isn't your thing, maybe you're just a close-up guy, but you get to watch it and enjoy it. Or you see someone do quick change or illusions, and you get to just enjoy all these different facets of magic with, and maybe you get some inspiration out of it, but maybe you just enjoy watching it. And that's super cool to me. And again, like you said, seeing magicians that maybe you've never heard of is super, super cool.
Yeah. What I like about that is when you are exposed to different types of magic, that just having that in your head will affect the way you think about your own magic. So you see a quick change act and you think, oh, well, that was cool. But you don't know how down the road that might somehow, change an idea that you have in some way, shape, or form because you saw something that you originally may not have thought you were interested in.
Yeah. I will tell you, the other two quick notes. One is my first magic convention, I'm pretty sure, was the Winter Carnival of Magic. I'd have to look back at what year, probably the mid to late 90s sometime. And one of the lecturers was Paul Cummins. And Paul has since left us as well, unfortunately, but incredible legacy, and what a outstanding technician and performer. And that was the first time I had ever seen a multiple card revelation routine. And Paul Cummins did it. So for those of you who know Paul's talent and maybe have seen the routine, you know how good it is. And I fell in love with that piece of magic. And through many iterations, all inspired by his work, that is one of the staples in my act today. And from the very first magic convention, I hadn't even considered that until this moment. But the other thing I wanted to mention about the power of magic conventions, you do get to meet all of your heroes. But the cool thing is some of them can become your friends.
Good point.
And that is pretty surreal. So the Stephen Bargatze obviously is someone who's here in our local club in Nashville. But I knew of Stephen before I ever met him. And now I can consider him and call him a friend. Kevin King, Jason Michaels, Ben Young, obviously.
Who?
But I remember one, and I won't tell the whole story. So the only way to get the story from me is to see me in Houston.
It's a lead magnet.
You gotta find me in Houston. I'm not even gonna ask you to buy me a drink, but it might help. And I will tell you the story of the IBM SAM combined convention, the first time it was held, or back in the early 2000s when it was held. Jason knows this story because Jason was there.
Oh, this is a good story. This is worth hunting him down for.
It is a great story. It's worth hunting me down. So find me in Houston at the IBM National. I will tell you this story. And it would just involves Paul Gertner, Stephen Bargatze, and David Williamson. So there you go. And I made a fool of myself, and then comedy ensued for the next 2 hours, late into the night. So the other cool thing about magic conventions, you can meet your heroes, they can become your friends, but you get all kinds of fun, crazy stories you're going to tell for the rest of your life. The fellowship, just hanging out in between sessions or at night and jamming with people and showing each other tricks and having fun. To me, that's worth the price of admission by itself, because there's nowhere else on the planet except for a magic convention where that many magicians from all over the place are going to gather and give you that opportunity. So,
we were, the IBM board was just in Washington. We were there last year in Houston. We had our mid-year meeting and we met at the convention hotel. And let me just say, to speak to what Scott's talking about, they have an outstanding space to hang out in. Like, there's this huge lounge that has a bar at the end, but it's this giant space with couches and comfortable chairs and all these different tables. And I guarantee that, I mean, that to what you're talking about, the hangout time, just literally the late night hang when it's, it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you still see some people hardcore jamming on some card tricks or whatever. That is to me, that's the type of thing that like fuels a magic convention, especially the young folks who are experiencing a convention for the first couple of times. And, they're staying up until 3 o'clock in the morning because they're getting to hang out with their friends, and everybody's just jamming on magic and teaching each other tricks and stuff like that. And this the Royal Sonesta in Houston is, first off, the convention space is fantastic. Like, I was highly impressed when we were there, and the lounge area where people are just going to be just hanging out and jamming and just giving each other a hard time and just having fun. It is excellent. It is an excellent space. And I wouldn't say that. I literally wouldn't say it, because we've been some places where I'm like, this is really cool space. And I think that people are going to really enjoy it. All right, I have one more story and then we'll wrap it up. I was at a convention. This was actually, speaking of the Winter Carnival, this was at a Winter Carnival of Magic a number of years ago. And I was sitting at the hotel, and I was just sitting in the little lounge area just with a friend, just because there was nothing going on at the time. And the convention hadn't even started yet. We were there early. And all of a sudden, Eugene Berger walks in, and he comes over. And Eugene Berger, if you don't know Eugene Berger was legend, literally legendary. One of the finest thinkers. Wrote multiple books, all of which you should look up and own because they're all fantastic. Great tricks in the books, but just great thinking to help you think about magic in a different way, whether it's thinking about it from the point of view of magic having meaning, or just lots of different ideas that he shared that were brilliant. But he comes in and he just kind of sit down with you. And yeah, I was like, oh yeah, awesome. Now, I had met Eugene before through some lectures that I attended, and we were just kind of sitting there, and he pulls out a deck of cards and he starts performing, and he does one or two tricks, and then we're just kind of sitting there, we're chatting. And I got up and I had something on my mind. And what was on my mind was the fact that I had been flirting with this idea for a magic trick that I didn't think people would get. I was like, I don't think the audience is going to get this, but I really want to do it. And so I kind of just laid it out for him. And I said, you do magic that sometimes is a little bit outside the box. It's great, but how do you do that? How do you do magic for an audience that you're not even really sure they're going to truly appreciate it? And he sat there for just a brief moment, and he thought about it, and he looks at me and he says, well, Jason, I guess sometimes we just have to be brave. We just have to be brave. And, that hit me. And I was like, wow. Sometimes when you're outside of the box and you're doing something that you're not sure somebody's going to get, you just have to be brave. You just have to put it out into the world and see what happens. And I actually use that story when I go out and I speak to groups. I use that story as one of the illustrations when I'm talking about taking on obstacles and things that feel overwhelming. Is that sometimes the best advice is that we just have to have courage and be brave. And I got to have that conversation with that legend of magic because I was at a magic convention. So, any final thoughts?
The link is live. Go sign up, people.
That's right. You can check out ibmconvention.com. The early bird registration is through February 28th. Of course, you can continue to register all the way up until the actual convention itself, but you'll save the most money if you do it right now. Let me run through the list of talent that we have booked so far. Dan Sperry, if you see Dan Sperry, he is a legitimate star in the magic world, but he loves to talk magic, and he's probably going to be like, why are you telling me?
By the way, I met Dan Sperry when he was competing at my first magic convention in Winter Carnival.
Yep. Dan Sperry loves to talk magic. He's the type of guy that you would think, oh, he's a big star, but you can go up and talk to Dan. Dan's like one of the nicest guys you've ever met. Dan Sperry, Nicole Cardoza, Rachel Ling Gordon, Jordan Purcell, Mervant Vera, John Allen, Joan Ducour, Zabreckis, Jared Kopf, Giacomo Bigliardi, Gaia Rossi, and there's like 8 or 9 more people still to be announced. This is going to be a banging convention. You need to be there, and that'll do it. All right. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you next time.
See you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.